In part one, we set up this linear program. Now in part two, we're going to solve it. And we're going to solve this by graphing. Chapter 4, we're going to use a different method, an algebraic method, but now we're going to solve it by graphing. Now graphing is probably not the method that you would typically want to use because it's a little cumbersome and tedious, but it gives us a good feel for what's going on when we use the algebraic approach. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to graph this inequality and this inequality. So I'm going to call this one 1 and this one 2. Now you have to remember how to graph inequalities. You get the boundary line, and then you get a test point, and you test a point on either side, and then you shade. Let's start by graphing line 1. So I'll write a little table here. Now I'm doing it this way because look how convenient this is. The x's and y's are on the left side, the constants on the right side, and these coefficients divide nicely into the 300. Same thing down here. So I'm going to use the intercept method, which means I'm going to choose x to be 0, and I'm going to put a little star there. That's the one I chose. Now if x is 0, what happens? Back here. If you put x equals 0, you get 4 times 0 is 0. That term just goes out, and you're left with 3y equals 300. So 3 into 300 is 100. So when x is 0, y is 100. And then choose y to be 0. And if you pick y to be 0, put 0 back in here, 3 times 0 is 0, that term goes out, and you get 4 into 300. And 4 into 300 is 75. We've got some points for line 1, but now let's go get line 2. We'll graph them after we get all the points. So x and y. Now I'm going to choose x to be 0. And when I choose 0 for x, I'm going to put that 0 into the second equation, right here, the second inequality, right here. 100 times 0 is 0. That term is gone. That's why it's nice to use 0. Terms disappear. And then you get 200y less than or equal to 10,000. All right, so what happens here? 200 into 10,000, well, that turns out to be 50. If you're not sure, get a calculator. And then what happens down here? Use y to be 0, and if y is 0, put 0 in for y here. That term is gone. You get 100x equals 10,000. So 10,000 divided by 100 is 100. Now, I'm going to graph these two inequalities, and I do that by getting the boundary line. So I've got lines here, I've got points that I can draw lines through. So let's do that. Now here's what I found. When you do this, if you're going to do it this way, get a coordinate system that's pretty big. So I'm going to draw a big one here. If I draw a small one, the lines can get so close together I may not be able to tell what's happening. So there's my x and y and my origin. Now, does this make sense that I'm only out here and up here? I don't have anything out here because x and y are always non-negative, right? We're counting things. So x's are never negative, y's are never negative. So here's how I'm going to graph this. I'm going to look for the biggest y that I've got. So look at the y's. I'm going to go on the vertical axis. So the biggest y is 100, and then I've got a 50. Now if I plot those, I can put the 100 way up here, and the 50 is about half of it. So I'll put that down here. Now do the same thing for the x's. The biggest x I have is, what do we got here? 100? All right, so the biggest x that I have is 100. So I'm going to go over here and make this far point 100. And then the next x that I have is 75. So try to guess where 75 is, right? That's 100. 50 is about halfway, 75 about 3/4 of the way. All right, so right here, maybe that's 75. And then we've got these zeros, but the zeros, right, you've got these zeros here, but the zeros are always right at the origin. Now, for line 1, let's pass a line through these points. So what points are they? You've got to remember what points they are for. So line 1 is going to be what? The y is 100, the x is 75. All right, so here the 100 will go to the 75. So I'll draw a line through there, if I can. Okay, I've got that line. Now, the points on this line, all the points on that line, they satisfy the equal part here. right? 4x plus 3y equals 300. Those are those points right there. We're looking for the points where it's less than 300. So we know how to do that. Perhaps we remember. Maybe this will remind you. You choose a test point. Now there's a theorem that says in an inequality, you have a boundary line. All the points that make the inequality true are on one side or the other. They're not mixed up. They're either all going to be below left or top right here. I just have to find which one. So I do that by choosing a test point. If it works for this one, it works for all of them. If it does not work for this one, it won't work for any of them. So I'm going to test 0, 0, just because it's easy to work with those numbers. And then if I put these zeros, if I put 0 in here and 0 in here, 4 times 0 and 3 times 0, that's 0. So I get what? 0 is less than 300. That's true. So that point right there, that gives me a true statement. So it's below left, so every point in this little triangular region is going to give me a solution. No solutions up here, they're all down here. So I'm going to shade that region below the line here. Now I'm just going to do it like this. I'm not going to shade the whole region. It would be a big mess. Now it's also above here because the y's are greater than 0. And it's out here to the right, all the x's are greater than 0. So far, every one of the points in here, pick any point in here, that's going to satisfy this inequality. Now we need the points that are going to satisfy this one. So that's going to come from line 2. So let's get the boundary line here. So what happens with the y and the x? The 50 on the y-axis goes with the 100 on the x-axis. So draw that line. It looks like this. And the points on the line, right, the points on the line itself, they satisfy the equal part of this inequality. I want the less thans. Now here's how this is always going to go. So we don't have to test. If it's less than, it's going to be to the left. If it's greater than, it's going to be up to the right. So these points I know are going to be to the left. Down here, they're going to be to the left, so I'm going to shade that part in here. I'm looking for the points to satisfy both of these inequalities. So where are they? Well, they have to be out to the right, they have to be up, they have to be below this line, and then they have to be to the left of this line here. So they're all going to be inside this region right here. And that region, there's a name, it's called the region of feasible solutions. Now all we have to do is out of those infinitely many points, pick the one or ones that make this earnings function as big as possible. There's a theorem we're going to use here, so we don't have to test every point in there. That would be impossible. There's a theorem that we're going to use. We're not going to prove it. We're just going to use it. And that says this, that if you take max and mins, right, max and mins, these occur at corner points. So we have some corner points here. Okay, I'll circle them like this in red. All right, there's that corner point here. There's this corner point here. There's this corner point here. And there's this corner point here. We have to test only those 4 points, and then we'll pick out the one that gives us the biggest value for E. So do we have these points? What is this one down here at the origin? Okay, that point is what? That point is 0, 0. Now I'm just going to go up clockwise here. What is this point? Well, the x-coordinate is 0. The y-coordinate is 50. So this point here is 0, 50. Now, keep going. I'll move down here. This one here, I don't know. We're going to have to get that. That's going to take a little bit of work on our part, but not much. Let's go down here because we can get that one easily, I think. What is this? We're 75 out on x, 0 on y. So this point here is 75 and 0. So let's get this point right here. All right, we'll get that point right there. So what is that point? Well, that is the point that is on both of these lines. So that's the point of intersection of 2 lines. So we have to solve this system, right? How do we find that point? You solve the system of equations. All right, so we need to solve this system. We're going to solve 4x plus 3y equals 300, right? Because we're looking at the line. 100x plus 200y equals 10,000. Now, I think you ought to go to Wolfram Alpha and type in this. RREF. Okay, open the matrix. The first row is 4, 3, 300. Close, comma, separate the rows. 100, comma, 200, comma, 10,000. Now don't put a comma in the 10,000. Wolfram Alpha just can't read that. So you put that into Wolfram Alpha, and that will give you this pair right here. Actually, what it gives you is this. When you RREF it, you get 1, 0, 0, 1, and then on this side, when I did it, I got 60 and 20. So over here, I got a 60 and a 20. So the X is the 60 and the Y is the 20. Now we have all 4 points. I've got this one, this one, this one, and this one. I'm going to put them into a table and just compute to see which one gives me the biggest value of E. So I'll build a table here. How about X, Y, and E? All right, now I'm just going to start right here at the origin. Now if I put zeros and 0 in here and 0 in here, what's the earnings? All right, so you put 0 and 0 in for X and Y. Now you're here, right? You want to put it back into here, 0 and 0. So I can probably squeeze that in. It would look like this. 13 times 0, it's kind of a mess. 13 times 0 plus 9 times 0 is 0. Right? So if you don't make any crates, you don't make any earnings. Let's just move up here, right? I'm just going to go clockwise. Any direction you want, just get all 4 points. So this is going to be 0 for X, 50 for Y. 0 for X, 50 for Y. So it's going to be 13 times 0 plus 9 times 50. All right, and when I did that one, well, that comes out to 9 times 5 is 45 and a 0, so that's $450. And then let's go down to our intersection of the two lines there. That's going to be 60 for X, 20 for Y, so it's going to be 13 times 60 plus 9 times 20. Okay, now what does that turn out to be? I got 960 when I did that. And then finally, we're going to be down at this point right here. That would be X is 75. That'd be 75 crate A box and no crate B boxes. So this is going to be 75 for X, 0 for Y. So it's 13 times 75 plus 9 times 0, and that turns out to be 975. So now you compare all these numbers. Which one's the biggest? It's this one right here. All right, so that's the biggest number right there. So we're going to say that the maximum earnings is $975 when, okay, we'll write it here in just a sec. So we're claiming now that E is max when X is equal to 75 and Y is equal to 0, but that's not the answer to the question. The question says how many crates of each type. So let's answer that question. How many crates of type A should we use? 75. How many of type B? 0. So I'm going to conclude then, or report, that earnings are maximum at $975 for the driver when we ship 75 crates of cargo A and 0 crates of cargo B.